Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Angela Braniff, and today I'm going to be doing a little Q&A video. I thought this would be kind of fun. The last one I did went over well. Y'all asked some great questions and you seemed to enjoy kind of that format and just sort of chatting about things that we don't really get a chance to chat about when I'm sharing like recipes or meal planning or a routine or cleaning or decluttering. Those types of videos are not always the best format to talk about things and answer questions. And I, for one, like to get to know the people that I'm watching, the channels that I watch. I just really love watching Q&As myself of someone's channel that I enjoy watching. I like to get to know them a little bit better, and I feel like this is kind of a fun and easy way to do that. So we are going to dive into another Q&A. I asked you guys over on Instagram, oh, by the way, because I guess this you're supposed to say these things, is that number one, you should subscribe if you haven't already, because why not? Number two, you should give this video a thumbs up if at any point during what is bound to be a very long video you hear something that you like. Give this video a thumbs up. And then number three, I always love to hear from you guys in the comments, so be sure to leave me a comment today as we chat about these different things. Oh, I just wanted to pop in here really quickly before we begin the Q&A to tell you guys that my husband and I launched a podcast. It is live as of April 1st. The podcast went live. It's on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, and we started a YouTube channel because we're also going to be doing video episodes of the podcast. Basically, every week my husband and I are going to be having a authentic conversation about a different topic related to parenting, marriage, faith, finances, all kinds of culture, all kinds of things. We want these conversations to feel very real and raw and genuine, and we hope that you guys will consider coming over and subscribing to the podcast, subscribing on YouTube or any of the platforms where you consume podcasts. I will leave everything linked down below. I think you guys are really going to love it. I will leave all of the information about the podcast linked down below in the description box. Come over, say hello. We would love to have you there. Okay, that's it for my announcements. Let's get back to the video. Okay, so with all of that out of the way, I got a ton of questions here over on Instagram, so I'm going to attempt to get through as many of them as I can. The last time I answered fewer questions, but with perhaps longer answers, so we'll see. Maybe this time I'll try to be a little bit more rapid fire and answer them quickly. I get a little long-winded. You know that if you've been around here for a while. I get a little long-winded, mostly because I feel like I need to always like explain things, sort of like what I'm doing right now. Anyways. Okay, so I'm seeing a ton of questions here about homeschooling. I specifically like homeschooling right now. I want to say one thing. I've done a video with some ideas about things to do with your kids during this virus time that people are at home. I have probably 25 plus videos on this channel that are all about different homeschooling topics. So scroll back. So a lot of that information is already there. But I have just a little teensy weensy bit of a rant that I want to go on really quickly. Just hear me out. I promise, like less than a minute. I just want to say that I am a little bit perturbed about the just sort of narrative right now about being home with your kids, stuck at home, being forced into homeschooling, and just the general conversation around homeschooling right now. Specifically, a larger newspaper recently did an article, the Washington Post did an article about how we are potentially going to have an entire generation of stunted children because they've been forced into this homeschooling. I read the whole article and I understand what they were trying to get at, which is a whole nother issue, is the setbacks that kids face when they are out of school for periods of time. Studies have shown that when kids take long breaks, summer breaks and stuff, they lose a month to 2 months of retained information, and that now, you know, we've got this going on, then summer break, and kids probably aren't going back to school till the fall, and how far back are they going to be through that? I hear ya. Really hate how people sort of position these articles and what they title them. But it's just mostly frustrating to me because I'm seeing this all over social media. So I just want to say this really quickly. This is not less than a minute. I'm sorry. This is not homeschooling. Quarantine schooling is not homeschooling. Initially, I felt like, oh, you know, I'm a homeschool mom. Maybe I can help out some of these moms and I can give them some advice. And I was more than happy to talk about homeschooling, and I still am. But the one thing that I want everyone to like drive into their heads is that quarantine schooling is not homeschooling. Being forced you understand what I'm saying, to stay in your home and not go out, not take your kids places, not go on field trips, not join groups, have get-togethers, do all these other things. That's not homeschooling. For most people, that's not homeschooling. So I feel like, as a homeschooler, we often have to battle these preconceived notions and sort of the social narratives around homeschooling. It's a constant battle for us. It's the number one question I get. In fact, I can't tell you how many, if you go back in my previous videos, although a lot of times I just delete them because I get so sick of it. Like, the number one question that new people will say is, oh, you have all that, I see that you homeschool. Like, how do you guys socialize your kids? And like, it's the number one question is about socializing during homeschooling. So I am so frustrated that I feel like because of sort of this narrative that now people are considering that what they're doing is homeschooling, that it's also then becoming sort of synonymous, right? This quarantine schooling is becoming synonymous with homeschooling, and it's not the same thing. What parents whose kids go to public school, private school, or any of the like are doing right now is school at home. That's not homeschooling. School at home. You are taking what your kids were doing in school and replicating it at home. That's the idea, right? Homeschooling for most parents involves so much research and effort that is put into understanding your children's learning styles, finding the right curriculums, finding things that interest you and your kids. There's so much that goes into to creating a homeschool environment for your kids. And I just think that it really is doing a disservice right now to homeschoolers for people to have this idea that this is what homeschooling is, because it's absolutely not. So that is my rant about that. I did a video a few weeks back with some ideas for parents if you've got your kiddos home now and you're really not sure what to do. And I just feel like across the board, every homeschooling mom that I know, every homeschooling channel and stuff, everyone has been more than willing to share information. A lot of homeschoolers have been putting on like free webinars and stuff like that, trying to help parents who are feeling frantic. So I'm seeing the homeschooling community respond in such kindness to try to help. And I just get so irritated, not with anyone in particular. It's not someone's fault. It's just sort of this now idea that's getting pushed that like this is homeschooling, and it's just not. And it makes me sad because it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and trying to help people understand that homeschoolers are not just a bunch of unsocialized freaks. And with people feeling like unsocialized freaks at home right now, it's really just not helping. Okay, that is my rant. Ooh, Lord. I need a sip of coffee. Hold on. I can't continue. Hold on. Get myself fired up over here. Okay. Now, let's move on to the questions and let's have some fun. Let's have some fun. Favorite Netflix show? I haven't been watching a ton of TV. I don't normally watch a ton of TV. I did just get done watching The Tiger King. Here's what I will say about that. I'm not going to make a big thing in this video. Spent a lot of my childhood in Florida. Nothing about that was surprising to me. That show is one of those that I'm like, it's a train wreck that you can't look away from, and it just gets crazier and crazier and crazier as the episodes go on. You keep thinking, well, this cannot get any weirder, and then it does. I will say that everyone's talking about Joe Exotic, and they're talking about, Carol Baskin. The one person that I'm not seeing people talk about, and the part that fired me up the most, this is how you know where people have like their own little points of contention, because the part that made me the most angry out of that entire show was towards the end. The overly tanned guy with the bandana who takes over the Tiger Park, and his girlfriend Lauren. Why can't I think of his name? Probably because my brain said he's a useless human, so why do I need to remember his name? But when he was sitting there being interviewed and just very nonchalantly like jokes about how his wife needs to get back in the gym after she has this baby, and then he starts talking about how like you should hire a hot nanny and blah, blah, blah. I was like, what? Like, I wanted to fly through the screen and punch that guy. So everyone's all up in arms about Joe Exotic, and I'm like, that guy needs to go down. He's a piece of... Your favorite Starbucks order? I usually either get a flat white or a chai latte, no water, and sometimes I'll get it dirty, which means like with a shot of espresso. Sometimes I'll just get the chai latte, but then other times I'll have them add espresso. But I usually get mine with no water, thanks to my friend Stephanie who taught me that. Then they just use milk, and it tastes, it's already good, but it tastes even better when you get it with no water. What products do you use in the boys' hair, and any tips for a new adoptive mama? So all three of our boys are African American, and we use a combination of the Shea Moisture brand. They have just beautiful products for both their skin and their hair, as well as the Cantu Kids, Cantu. Target carries that brand, and I've just found that we really like a number of their products as well. Do you have any big regrets in life? You know, there's things I've done, there's things I've said that I wish that I could take back because it hurt somebody, or it hurt myself in some way. But ultimately, I think as far as like big regrets, it's hard to say that because I'm just a firm believer that all of these things are little puzzle pieces in your life, and they all conspire together to bring you where you are, or for me, where I am. And I feel a little bit like, oh, but if you took that like a Jenga, right? Think of it like Jenga. Jenga, that's how you say it. The little wooden pieces, you know, like all of those little things are all the little wooden pieces that build up to this tower that is your life. And when you start pulling things away, then the tower might not crumble. But then again, you pull out the wrong one, you remove one experience or something like that, and the whole thing can crumble and your life would look different. It wouldn't be what it is today. So I don't know. I struggle a lot with the idea of regrets. I know I've made a lot of mistakes, but as far as like having something that's just like, oh, this is a huge life regret for me and I wish I could go back and change it, not so much. Do you think that you will ever adopt again, or is Benji the last one? We always get a lot of questions about whether or not we're done. Are we going to have more kids? And it depends on the day that you ask me what my answer is. I don't love saying never. I don't like saying like, oh no, we're absolutely done. We're never having any more kids. Because in the past, when I have said that, it's not been true. My husband and I both have really just gotten to the place where we trust God with our life, with our family. And if we feel like he's asking something of us, if we feel like he's putting something on our heart to move forward with, then we want to be open and ready and willing to do that. So I don't like to say never. There's nothing in the works. There's no plans of anything, because we've just learned that, you know, we love each of our kids so much and we can't imagine our lives without them. So to think that there might be a child out there that, you know, God is asking us to move forward with adopting or something like that, and we didn't do it because we said, oh no, we're not having any more kids, and we got to stick to that because we said no, and then we would miss out on that child. I just can't imagine that. I don't want to imagine that. So we're always open to whatever the Lord has for us. But as of right now, there's nothing in the works or anything like that. Have you ever thought about making a children's book about adoption? Absolutely, yes. It's on my bucket list. I have a 2-book deal with my publisher, Harper One. So I will be writing another book for them. But then I also I have it on my bucket list. Christopher and I want to do a cookbook, and we also want to do a children's book. So I have a lot of exciting plans for more books. So we'll see what happens there. What are some of your favorite places to shop for kids' clothes? In the past, we've pretty much always gotten all the kids' clothes from like Target, Old Navy, H&M. Gymboree is back now, which is super exciting. Holy cannolis. I've worked with them over on Instagram, and some of their collections are so cute. But as I'm trying to move to more ethical shopping, the kids arena is still a really hard one for me to navigate because it can be very expensive to buy clothes for 8 children from some of the like ethical brands that are on Instagram and stuff like that. Their kids' clothes are really expensive, times 8 kids. Can't happen. But H&M has a conscious line, which I really love. But I'm also interested in looking at secondhand, Poshmark, ThredUp, places like that. And we have a couple of kids resale shops here that whenever stores open back up, I want to check as well for summer clothes for the kids. Someone said, taboo subject, but do you receive any financial help for adopting? This is an interesting one because we get comments like this all the time on our videos that are like, oh, stop having so many kids. You're just doing it for the check, the government check. We don't get paid anything for adopting a child. In fact, we pay Now, you can adopt out of the foster care system, which is a virtually free adoption. And I do know that if you adopt through the state, well, if you're a foster parent, you get a little stipend. But every foster parent I know says it's barely enough to cover that child's expenses. So, and if you have a foster child or if you've adopted from the foster care system, I believe that child gets like Medicaid or state insurance. And I believe they also, depending on the state you live in, I feel like, I wish I knew this for sure, but they get a free ride to a state college as well. So there are some benefits for children who are adopted through foster care, or if you are a foster parent and you are fostering kids, I believe. Don't hold me to that. I'm not a foster parent, so I don't know specifically. But as far as just private adoptions, which is what we have done, we don't get paid anything at all. We don't get help with medical insurance. We don't get help with college. Like, it's, as far as the government or anyone else is concerned, these are our children that we adopted. They are ours. They are now our responsibility. We pay for all their health insurance. We pay for their college stuff. We pay for everything, and we get paid nothing. I feel like that's just such a misconception. It's one of the comments that cracks me up the most when people are coming and trying to be like nasty. They're like, oh, you're just adopting these kids so you get more money from the government. And I'm like, honey, trust me, nobody is paying me anything. Someone said, do you think you'll ever move to a bigger house? I don't know that I would say that we would ever move to a bigger house. Our house, square footage wise, is very large, and I don't feel like we need a bigger house by any means, especially now that I've done the decluttering and all of that. I don't want a bigger house. What I would like potentially is a better laid out house, where things aren't as compartmentalized, where there's a little more open family space. My ideal would be a one-story house that all of the living space is in the middle. It's got big, tall ceilings with a bunch of windows for lots of natural light. And you've got like a big kitchen and family room, and everything's kind of open, maybe like a front office area that you could close off the door. But everything is like big and open feeling. And then you have bedrooms on each side. So maybe like a big master suite on one side for mom and dad. And then on the other side, a whole gaggle of bedrooms for kids. That would be my ideal layout for a house. Our house is 3 stories, and so the third story is like a finished in. I mean, it's a bedroom and everything, but the ceilings are low up there, so it's not really an attic space. I don't really know how you would describe that. It's like a lofty kind of lofty. It's loft-y is what I'm trying to say. A loft type space. And so it's like 3 floors of the house, and then all the rooms are very compartmentalized. So an ideal for me, like I said, would be all the living space in the middle, rooms on each side, 1 story, giant pantry, and lots of space in a garage for extra refrigerators and freezers. That would be nice. We are always in the back of our mind thinking about buying some land and building. And I will be honest with you guys. Okay. With all of this going on with this virus and stuff, I've always been the kind of person that was like, no, I don't need to have a bunch of food storage, and I don't need to whatever. I don't know why exactly. I felt like, I'm not really sure where I got it in my head that was like, not that it was bad, but that it was overkill. It was too much. I didn't need that. But I will be honest with you that with everything going on with the world right now, I'm like, we have 8 children. We need better storage, and we need better supplies. I don't want to be like a doomsday prepper, if you will, with like a bunker. I'm not trying to build an underground bunker, although I wouldn't mind having one, but I'm not trying to build an underground bunker. But Ciara and I talked about it actually this morning, and we are going to start a little journey. We've always wanted to create 72-hour survival kits, which I've did a bunch of research a number of years ago about that idea of having this backpack for each person in your family that has 72 hours worth of supplies in it. So should there be a evacuation for weather or something more nefarious, then you can grab your backpack and go. And everyone has what they need. So I think if you guys are interested, we will do a little video series sort of sharing what that's going to look like for our family. All these scenarios that felt like extreme, like that's never going to happen. I think that one thing that I have learned from all of this going on right now is that sometimes the things that we think will probably never happen, or, oh, that could never happen, or whatever, can absolutely happen. And I don't want to be caught with my pants down, for lack of a better term. Like, I want to be prepared, not for me, but for my kids. Like, as a mom, I need to be prepared for my kids in a way that feels reasonable to me. Now I'm thinking of Parks and Rec, the reasonableists, which is what they called themselves, so that people would think that their crazy ideas were reasonable. But I want to be prepared in a reasonable way, not like an over-the-top way, but just a reasonable way. So if someone offered to show only you proof of aliens, would you want to see it? Yes. Yes. In fact, I'm telling you guys, I've fallen down all kinds of rabbit holes during this quarantine, but I started listening to some podcast episodes with a woman named Annie Jacobson. She's an investigative journalist, and she wrote a book back in 2011 called Area 51, and it has a longer title than that. I'll leave it linked down below in the description box. And it's not what you think. It's not like this whole book about aliens or confirming any conspiracy theories about aliens. It's talking about, she has all these now unclassified documents from our government about the use of Area 51 and the surrounding areas and different programs. And she's interviewed, I believe, over 70 different military personnel, CIA people, and sort of putting together for you the timeline and the story of how all of that came to be and the projects that were done there, specifically spy planes being built. The U-2 plane, the SR-71 Blackbird, and I think the F-117, just different projects that were done in and around that area regarding spy planes and stuff. It's very interesting, and she does talk about aliens in that book towards the end with an interview that she did with someone, which is meant to sort of explain the crash in Roswell, and it really like kind of blew my mind. Like, if that is true, what she's saying at the end of this book, it's even more disturbing than aliens. That's all I'll say. So look into her. So I finished that book, and now I'm reading her next book. I'm reading her books in order. They're kind of robust books, but they're so fascinating because it's all history and stuff that most of us, at least me, didn't know a lot about. So the next book I'm reading is Operation Paperclip, and that is about the German scientists that were Nazis that the U.S. brought over to work for us here in the United States, and really just sort of lied to everybody and said that they were the good Germans, when in reality some of them were some of the highest ranking Nazis working for Hitler. So it's very interesting to understand that entire operation and this struggle between like morality of hiring these people or risking them, going to the Russians during this race for power and technology and the Cold War and everything. It's all fascinating. So I just finished her Area 51 book, which was, like I said, it wasn't like a weird alien conspiracy book. It was very fascinating. And now I'm reading the Operation Paperclip, and she's got, I think, 3 more after that. When I'm done with this, I'll read one of her other books called The Pentagon's Brain, and then I'm going to read her newest one, which is Surprise, Kill, Vanish. And they're all about like secret ops and stuff. So she's had some pretty incredible interviews, and she digs deep into all this research and keeps up with documents that are being declassified by our government, because a certain period of time goes by and our government will declassify some things, not everything, but some things. So it's all very interesting. Why was I talking about that? Aliens. Yeah, I would definitely want to see it. If somebody had irrefutable evidence of aliens, I would want to see it. Lots of questions about will I keep homeschooling my kids through high school? Did they express any interest in going to public school? Again, this is one of those questions that people ask us a lot. Like, oh, it's cute that you homeschool now, but like you're gonna stop, right? By the time they go to high school, or like we're doing it against our kids' will and they don't want to be homeschooled is sort of the underlying message with a lot of the questions that we get. And I'm not trying to be divisive by any means, but I think that it's just so interesting to me that nobody ever asks that of public school or privately schooled children. Nobody's ever like, well, but you're going to homeschool them, right? Like later, you're going to bring them home, right? Like you're not going to leave them in that environment their whole lives, 18 years. You're not going to do that, right? You sound like a jerk when you say it like that, right? So it feels the same for homeschoolers to be questioned and asked those kinds of things. Number one, this is not spiked, but I'm going to say this anyways. The sort of audacity that people have to think that you owe them an explanation about that. But second of all, to suggest that a child can't be homeschooled through high school and still be successful. There's so many incredible stories of kids going on to do amazing things after being homeschooled. So I don't put any parameters on that. I'm not saying that we definitely will, but I'm not saying that we won't. We will play it child by child and sort of year by year as we go on. I don't have any intentions of stopping homeschooling, especially given so many things in the world. I want to help my children along in their education. It's very important to me that my children take some responsibility for their own education and avoid indoctrination. And so, just to be frank, like it or not, that's our choice. And we live in a country where we get to make that choice. And I'm very, very grateful for that. So we have every intention of continuing on with homeschooling until we decide not to, at which time we will let you know. Someone said, you always look so put together. Where do you get the motivation for it all? I get a lot of comments about this too. We'll be like, oh, you always, seem to do your hair and makeup and get dressed. And, even when I'm doing decluttering videos, people will comment like, oh, you're wearing like regular clothes. For me, I learned years ago, this was a number of years ago now, that I am more productive when I get myself dressed. It's just how I am. It's like how I'm wired. For some people, they're like, give me a comfortable sweatshirt, some leggings, throw my hair up in a ponytail, and away I go. For me, when I don't get myself dressed, I'm just not as productive. It's just my personality. I'm not even entirely sure why that is. I certainly do not get fully dressed, hair, makeup, and clothes every single day. There are lots of days, especially now in the quarantine, that I am not really doing much with myself, hair or makeup wise. But I do definitely try to get out of I do get out of my pajamas pretty much every day. I can't think of a time in recent history that I stayed in my pajamas, because if I stay in my pajamas, I ain't getting my butt off the couch. So for me, it's about productivity. That's just the way that I'm most productive. Just curious, would you ever want to complete your college degree? No judgment. I don't take that as a judgmental question at all. Yes, I would love to go back to college. I have thought about it many, many times. I'm not saying that I won't. I might be one of those ladies who goes back to college at 40. But my thing is I want 6 different degrees. I want to go back to school for so many different things that I'm like, okay, that might be hard to do. So yes, someday I would love to. And for now, until I know exactly what I want to do and could make that work timing wise and everything, I just choose to not let the obstacle of the fact that I don't have a college degree stop me from learning about things I want to learn about. There's so much information out there, so much information, online classes that you can take, books you can read, podcasts you can listen to. Like I said, my husband and I have really been diving into a lot of World War II stuff, and we have both learned more about World War II in just the last few months of watching documentaries, listening to podcasts, reading books than we ever did in the entirety of our schooling years. So when you're interested in something, I think that you can find so much of the knowledge. I'm just such a firm believer that there's so much information out there, and the internet has opened up this wide array of ways for us to consume information, and I love to learn. I love continuing to learn. So I'm always finding ways to make that happen, even though I'm not sitting in a classroom or taking a graded class. I'm still always learning, and I want my kids to see that too. I want my daughters specifically to see that being a mom and raising kids doesn't mean that you don't have interests. It doesn't mean that you don't have things that you care about, hobbies, or things that you do just for your own edification or enjoyment or pleasure, music that you listen to, painting, or just different things. I don't want my kids to believe that being a mom or a stay-at-home mom means that it's a death to self, in the sense that you no longer have any interests or anything that makes your brain spin or makes your heart race or gets you excited or curious, that all of that just goes away when you have children. I think that's part of, I'm getting on a soapbox. I think that's part of the issue that I have with current narrative about children being a burden and things like that, is because we've painted this picture that stay-at-home moms are just all they're good for is washing dishes, mopping floors, and changing butts, that they don't have any other interests or things that they care about, are not educated, or, does that make sense? So I get a little like frustrated with that, that back and forth battle, that I want my girls to know that if that's the choice they make to get married and have kids and they want to be a stay-at-home mom, that doesn't mean that they can't continue to learn and do things that are important to them and things that they enjoy, continue to further their own education in certain topics and things like that, areas of interest. I think that's important. Again, we just don't have to put ourselves into these little boxes that say you are this, therefore you are also that, or not that. What's your natural hair color? I don't know. Why would you even ask me that? No, I'm just kidding. I really don't. I do know my natural hair color, although I haven't really seen it since I was about 13 was when I started dyeing my hair. So my natural hair color, I mean, you can see my roots right here. It's this. I call it dishwater brown. It's that color that the water gets when you like let the dishes soak in the sink. It's that color, dishwater brown. Do you still hate having bangs on your forehead? Yes. I could never have bangs because the touch, the feeling, I talked about this in an Instagram post about how I had, at the time, nobody named it sensory processing disorder when I was a kid. But when I was a kid, I definitely struggled with a lot of sensory sensitivity, specifically to clothing and different things like that. But one of the things that literally made my skin crawl was my mom always made us have these bangs, and they were the kind of bangs that started from back here and like went like this, like a toupee of bangs. And just the feeling of those bangs touching my forehead, it made me so nuts. And I would constantly be trying to like part them. And then at one point when I don't even remember how old I was, I just held them up like this, took scissors and cut them right here. I thought that was a good idea. So obviously I was young enough to not understand what happens with hair when you cut it at the root. But so then I had all this like spiky fringe right here from where I just cut my bangs because I couldn't take it. My sensory feelers were like, I couldn't handle it. So no, I cannot have bangs. I'd love to know more about how you talk birds and bees with your kids. I love your open and honest, and then it cuts off because these questions don't give you a lot of space. The long and short of it is we start talking to our kids about those types of things very young. And we watch a lot of documentaries, and we have found that by allowing our children, when I say documentaries, I mean like animal stuff. And we found that by allowing our children to experience the birds and the bees through the animal kingdom first, it helps to bridge that gap and make them aware that like, okay, well, animals mate to have babies, so do people. And it makes it less, I don't know, it's just, we're very pragmatic about things. Like, we're not silly about stuff like that. I joke around all the time because it's my sense of humor, right? But like, I joke around all the time about like, I say like the Queen Mother and stuff like that. But we use, with our kids, we use actual correct terminology for body parts. And we just try really hard to like not let any of that be silly or weird or conversations that they don't feel comfortable with. And I will tell you that by allowing your kids that like space to say, like, you can talk to me about anything, you can ask me, they're going to ask you some stuff, okay? They're going to have questions, they're going to come to talk to you about things, and you're going to feel like, why did I tell them they could talk to me about anything? I meant anything but that. I don't want to talk about that. That has happened to me multiple times, specifically in the last year, where a child has come to me with a question, and I have to like try really hard to keep a straight face because I'm trying to be like not... I'm trying not to let them see that like this is either awkward for me or makes me laugh or whatever. So I mean, that's the best advice that I could give is to start really young, introducing these ideas. I personally think that using correct terminology is very helpful because then when you sit down to talk about things, you don't have to be like, well, we take a wee-wee and then you have a cupcake and you're using all these things, like you're using this terminology that doesn't really make sense, and it makes using words like sperm and ovulation and uterus and other things, like as you're discussing all of the parts and pieces and how they all work together. I don't know, I just feel like it helps the whole process to be smoother and make more sense to kids when the terminology is consistent and we're not all of a sudden introducing the idea of, I don't know that can I say the words on YouTube and not get demonetized? I'm not sure. That is another problem with our society, is I should be able to say the words and not get demonetized because that's what they're called. How do you and CR handle finances? I think we're going to do a couple episodes about finances on our podcast, talking about like how we've divvied up responsibilities with finances over the years, what that used to look like, what it looks like now, how we make financial decisions, mistakes we've made. I feel like that's a more in-depth question than I can answer here. So there will be an episode coming in the future on our podcast about that, and I'll leave our podcast link down below as well. Do you ever consider using reusable or cloth diapers for your kids? Why or why not? I did actually try cloth diapering when Shelby was a baby. My sister used to cloth diaper many kids ago, and I thought, oh, I'm going to try that too. And it just did not work well for me. I feel like it's one of those things that either you love it and you're really gung-ho and you want to do it, or you're not and you don't. And I feel like I'm in the not and don't category. At what age do you guys potty train and take the passies away? Any tips and tricks that worked? People are still like up in arms too about our toddlers still using their pacifiers. It's so funny to me. And I'm not talking to you, this lady in particular. I didn't feel like your comment was meant to be like aggressive. But people comment on it all the time. And it's so funny to me, number one, that like, why do you care when my kids are potty trained or when we take their pacifiers away? I don't know. I've never watched someone else's video or followed someone on Instagram or whatever and felt like, oh my gosh, that she should potty train that kid. She should take that pacifier away. She should whatever. And then take that thought and message them or comment or be nasty to them because they haven't potty trained their kid yet, or they didn't take away their passy when I thought they should. Like, why would you, like, why would I do that? That's like, that's not my business. That's not my family. That's not my kid. Like, who cares? That's their life. But people get really funny about certain things. The motherhood space is arguably the worst space for that kind of judgment, where moms, I think it comes from a place of always having our own hackles up because we know that other moms are being like, everyone's afraid that someone else is judging them, and so they then want to be judgmental too. So everyone's walking around like this with their hackles up, right? Like, I'm doing things my way, I don't like your way, you should, and it's just this weird dynamic that gets created where I'm like, you just do what works for you and I will do what works for me. And I will not come into your online space and attack you for making choices for your kids that I wouldn't make for mine. Like, that's your life and your children. You live it and I'll live mine. With that said, we potty train our kids when they are ready. When they show us the readiness signs that we are looking for. I have found across 8 children that when you try to force potty training before a child is ready, it makes the process miserable for both of you. It makes it take a lot longer. You have to deal with a lot more accidents, which can be not only frustrating at home, but humiliating for a child in public. So I have just found that waiting for my children to be ready to potty train is the best time to potty train them. To me, there's no award for potty training your kid at the youngest age possible. Nobody gives you a medal and says, congratulations, you potty trained your 18-month-old. Or, oh, sorry, we're gonna have to take away some coins out of your jar. You didn't potty train your kid till they were 3.5. There's no awards for that. And they're not going to college still wearing diapers, or even elementary school for that matter. So it's like, you as a parent, like, I just wish that moms were able to do what worked best for them without this pressure that other moms create for feeling like you have to do things in someone else's timetable. So most of our children, pretty much all of our children, have been potty trained by the age of 3. It's somewhere between 2.5 and 3 that most of our children have shown the readiness signs for potty training. There are physical readiness signs, verbal readiness signs that we look for. And that's when we know that that child is ready to potty train. All potty trained, like I said, right in that 2.5 to 3-year-old stage. Some of them a little on the earlier side, some on a little bit of that later to 3 window, but roughly around there. And it's the same thing with pacifiers. We've had a few kids that use pacifiers, a few that didn't, and the ones that do are always what I call passy hounds. I really love their pacifiers. We usually get rid of the pacifier for good by the time they're 3 years old. So the twins we're moving in a direction of getting rid of the pacifiers, but I will say, and I want any mom to hear this who's maybe trying to potty train or remove passies or get someone to sleep through the night or struggling with something, right now, with everything that's going on, give yourself grace in any of those areas. Give your kids grace in those areas. The stressful times are not times to try to remove comfort items from children. That's my belief, and I think that we can take pressure off of ourselves just because somebody on the internet thinks that your kid shouldn't have a pacifier anymore. You don't want to remove that comfort item from them right now. It's okay. Another couple months, one direction or the other, isn't going to be the end of the world. And so that's my long-winded answer to that. Passies and potty training. I'll let you guys know when it's done. We do it when we're ready and they're ready. When can you come back to Uganda, says my friend Loveland. You tell me when, Loveland. Well, right now the planes are not flying and the borders are closed in many places, but I have every intention of going back to Uganda. I don't know if it will be this year. It will depend on what Loveland's got going on there, but I'm definitely going back with Shine and going back to Uganda. Hopefully this year, if not early next year, I will be there with bells on. So I'm going to end it on that one. I hope you guys enjoyed this Q&A. Be sure to give it a thumbs up if you did. Subscribe to my channel if you've not already. That's it, and I will see y'all again very soon. Bye.